it without looking at the words, because I did give them the words, so they could rehearse it. It was a little thing I did, so we'd have him Baroque at the end of the year. But they did, the children did it. So guess what? I am going to have all of you attempt to do the little ditty. And if you can say the little ditty, Ira has in his pocket, I think, he better, he's my prop man, $5. 5 $1 bills. And guess what, George? Your picture's on every one. So I'm gonna have you hold it, okay? $5, okay? And that's you. What am I don't know what I'm doing. That's okay, Joy. That's music to my ears. Come on up here.
But now they can't hear you.
All right.
You lost your mic.
Did I lose my mic?
Yeah.
It's coming back.
You're gonna turn it up?
That's as high as it goes. Obviously, if it goes higher, it screeches.
Okay, well, maybe you'll want it to screech after I get through with this little ditty. You wait till I give you this. Stand up with me, Ira. This is your ditty, and you're gonna say it with me. And then if anyone in here can say it, he's gonna be out $5. Don't worry about it. Look at him, he's so handsome. Are you ready, Rep?
You ready?
Are ready?
Here we go.
Here we go. Ready? It's Tombo Gill, it's time again. It's a rat trap penny, winkle, fumma-doodle, yalla, bugga, rink, dum, bolly, won't you time again?
Got that? Want to try it again? Get your bon Tomodachi?
All right, do we have anyone that thinks they might
Try it
be?
again.
Yeah, we want to try it again. All right, ready, Rep? You got to say it again. Ready? Give them another chance. This is the second chance, and this is it. All right, it's time, Bogill, it's time again. It's a rat trap penny, winkle, fumma-doodle, yalla, bugga, rink, dum, bolly, won't you time again?
I see 3 or 4 guys in here that I've known before, and they're the ones that taught me this.
They did, oh, well, they forgot.
Yeah, they're right here.
Is there anyone in the room who thinks they might be able to say it? Oh my gosh. A guy from West Virginia. I can't believe it. All right. Are you ready? You want to try it?
I'll try it.
Okay, come on, let's try it.
Since it's from West Virginia, that's the only reason I'm going to try it, okay? It's time, Bogill. It's time again. It's a rat trap penny winkle farmadoodle. Yella bugga ring tum. Bully, won't you time Bo again?
Give him the $5. Yay! Yay! All right, George, will you give him the $5? How wonderful! Look at this. Look how we had somebody that could do it. Wow! Now that took me all the way to West Virginia to learn. Okay. Now listen. Have Kitty take Kitty to the dollar store and buy you a really good gift.
Yeah, but I can buy her 4 things. Oh,
I know it's $25.25. But
4 boxes of Peeps. That's what.
All right, now, you see, now what you experienced is another thing that we experienced at the school, because there was always a sense of humor in our school. We didn't have a problem laughing at ourselves or having little tricks played and so forth. But we also just really enjoyed having fun, all right? I want to give a little bit of background to you, for you, as to how we came about doing the school in the first place, right? I spent 20 years in public school education. And as you said, Lee, thank you very much, those were all the positions I held. But in the directorship of special ed, I was charged with traveling the district. So, and going in and making sure things were going well for our students. Well, what I found is they were not going well for my students. And I became very concerned because not only were they being bullied by the other kids because they were having trouble learning, there were little throwaway put-downs from the staff and the administration. Well, I'm the kind of person that if there's a problem, it's going to be solved, and that's how I work. So I went to my friend, who is the superintendent of schools, and I said, Fred, I told him what was happening. We've got a problem. We have to fix this. I cannot, in my position, watch these children who are already behind the 8 ball being thrown away because they have good potential. So Fred sat behind his desk, folded his hands, and he looked at me and said, Carol, don't you dare open Pandora's box. And when he said that, out of the sky came Dolly Parton. And I stood up and I said to him, Fred, you can take this job and help me. Job it. And I left. I did. I quit that day. And then I went home and I cried for 3 weeks because I didn't know what I was going to do. I loved teaching. What was I going to do? And then being the think outside the box kind of person that I am, and how can I rectify what was happening in the schools, I thought, what I did was an advocacy. I was an advocate, and that's a good thing. So I had a mother who was really good in financial business stuff. I wasn't, but I was good in the school stuff. And I went to her and I said, I would like to start an advocacy business with you, if you'd be willing to help me in this process. And she said, sure. So I would go in, or I had a whole range of people that were trained who would test, who would design what we call diagnostic prescription programming for these children who are failing in the school. And then I would go in and work with the parents, showing them how to be members of team and what to ask for when they were being asked to sign off on their kids, okay? So there we were doing that. And then I realized some of these kids weren't growing at all. They had entered school, like all kids do, in kindergarten, and by grade 6, they were still at kindergarten. That was not acceptable. Because in the timeline, in the time that we were working, the new law, 94-142, was passed at a federal level. And that new law said that these children needed free and appropriate education, a FAPE. So the school system was free, but it was not appropriate. So I would integrate the record. That's all I did. I took their record, I integrated it, and I went to due process. And we won. And these kids were being placed out of our state, which was not really a good thing, but they were getting the education they needed, okay? Well, we had worked really hard on this one case, and this little boy really needed placement somewhere. But his father, at the end of the hearing, and they had won, came up to me and said, Carol, I can't send him. I can't send him. He's only 12 years old, going on 13. I want him with my family. So I'm sorry, I put you through all this. I said, you didn't, that's all right. But he said, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to build you a school. And if you direct it, it's yours. And so the first school started, and that was Learning Skills Academy. And I'm going to do a PowerPoint that will show you that school at the beginning. Later on, I ran that for 18 years, directed it and taught and did all this wonderful fun stuff with it, and then retired. And again, it seemed like 3-week timelines didn't work very well with me. And even at 60, I was saying, I can't be home. I don't feel done. So he said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to start a school. Oh, God, all right, let's go for it. And we did. And this time it was a for-profit school. You had to apply and all of that, and we did that. So that's how it came to be that we were involved in this in the first place. So LSA and the Cool School were born. And we're going to start that, but first of all, I'm going to ask you to sing, okay? Because we had a school song. And so I'm going to ask you to sing the school song. Are you ready? Okay, you ready? You all know this, don't you? Ready? This little light of mine, I'm gonna make it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna make it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And you know what? Everywhere we went, and that's one of the verses, we sang this song. And the buses, on the trips, and everything we did, because they all had a light to offer us. And I'm going to tell you that the young adults that you're seeing on these posters were my children that I had in the school. And I'm going to ask you at some point to take a minute and look at them. They did write a testimony to the school on one side, but they also showed you where they've been educated beyond cool school, and also what they were doing as a profession. So I wanted to bring them here to share with you, to let you know that what you're going to see today works. These children are examples of what works for kids when they're treated and appreciated, but not only that, taught in a specific way. So do I have that little thing right here? Okay. All right. Now this picture is in both of the schools, the foyers of both of the schools, because to me it represented one student who is centered on the earth, on the world. And look at his face, he's wondering about those things. So we had this particular focus print in our school's framed. It also was in our brochures. I hope I got the right button. Oh no, I didn't. Okay, okay. There I go. Okay, now, you don't just, out of the blue start a school. There were influences in my life that I want to share with you, and there were three here. One of them was Dr. William Cruikshank, the other was Dr. Samuel Kirk, and the other was a school nurse named Ginny Holder. She was my mentor. Ginny worked in the State and National Learning Disability Association, and I was never a member. I was just teaching in the classroom, and she would come in and sit there and watch me teach, and she'd stay with me. And pretty soon she was asking me to do little things for her, like she wanted me to put together a conference for 250 people. The same, all throughout the state, the very first conference on learning disabilities. So she gave that to me, and she helped me, but we did it together. And then she said, oh, I'm going to Boston, and I'm going to be meeting with 2 people, and I want you to come. So I went, and who was there but these 2 men? And what were they working on? They were working on the 94-142 law. It was not yet done, it was not yet past Congress, but I watched them work on it. These men had a whole lot of wonderful research behind everything that they were doing and putting into that law. And so they did influence me about what a school should be for this type of child. And Ginny, she had a son with ADHD, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him later, because that's another whole story. So there were influences. Keep going back. And then there were programming experts. I didn't have anywhere to go in my state to find a program that was doing something for these children. So I went to Dr. Chad Drake. He had a school in Massachusetts. He was dyslexic. He had a learning disabled school, and he took me in as an intern. I was working on my thesis, which was, I didn't even know at the time I was going to be doing this, which was really designing a school that would fit in the public school or privately, okay? But he took me under his wing and said, come and I'll train you. So he did. And then Bill Carpenter said, I'll build you a school. And I'm going, oh my God, I really haven't had the experience to know what to do with this. So I went back to Chad and I said, will you please take that offer and start a school like yours in New Hampshire. He said, no, I'm too old. I'm not going to do it, but you can. And I'm going to send you one of the best experts I know for language-based instruction and for the kind of learning that needs to happen. Her name is Dr. Clara Maslow. She was retired. She came every day, every week, not every day, every week, and helped me to put the program together and the training for my staff in the first year. After that, oh, well, I'll talk about that a little bit. Now, the man in the inn is Reuven Feuerstein. He was an Israel professor and founder of a program called Feinstein's Instrumental Enrichment. And he was the missing link for me. I knew that my children had, tested low on the Wechsler, some of them, but I knew they were smarter than that. This man believed that everyone could learn and that cognition could be changed. And so he developed this program called Feinstein's Instrumental Enrichment, and it was the missing key. This one got put into my cool school. I didn't have it before that, but he helped me to understand how to do that. And so I'm going to go on because I want you to understand this. These are the demographics. 5 to 8 grade, 5th to 8th grade, lacking literacy and cultural literacy. They didn't have either. They were failing socially and academically, always. Their self-esteem was gone. They were damaged goods, these kids. They were trashed. And I saw it my duty and my responsibility to recycle these children. And that's what you're going to see in this program because they were recycled. All right, so we started our first school, Learning Skills Academy. That's the one that was built in the back with 5 students. We had only 5. One of them was a little girl in the front. She's on one of these posters up here, by the way. And Billy is the little kid with his hands on his hip, had a good presence. All right? By the end of the 18 years, we had 150 kids in our program. But we started with 5. And that was okay because we had a chance to have a little opportunity to really observe what we were doing and whether or not it was working for them. All right, we had a core belief. Everyone has the capacity to learn. We really believed that everyone did. Little diamonds in the rough. We provided the foundational tools and confidence to create successful lifelong learners. And Lee, see that little girl up there? You need to take her Facebook pages to me every day about history and science and have a whole Emma Ragnarsson trivia. This kid, she's an adult, but every day she sends me 5 for history and 5 for science. So, I thought of you immediately. That's her. These are still my friends. Little guy in the middle just got married last year. That's Casey. Isn't he cute? Everything was student-centered. Every single thing we did didn't matter what I wanted, and it didn't matter what my staff wanted. It mattered, but not in the way of education. Their job was to be accountable to these children, and we made sure that happened. We worked with reaching students in a way that they could understand. The little drumming up there, we didn't have money for a music teacher, but I used the community. There were plenty of people out there who were doing things in music. This particular man, I said, I'll pay you if you come and do drumming, African drumming with my students. And he said, you don't need to pay me, I'll come. All I had to do was ask people, and they would come to me. I'm really looking at this history, and I'm seeing this community resource part, so important. And sometimes they just don't reach out, but it's all there. We had a band, and we studied Africa, and we had a band, and we did a performance with what he did with my kids. They came in and he learned to play. The children at the bottom, that's our gym class. Our gym class was outward bound. We did not have a regular, We did every week, we went to Outward Bound, and I'll talk more about that. But there they learned challenge, they learned teaming, they learned how to overcome things that were standing in their way in a way that wasn't book related. Okay? All right. I can go up. I've got the little red thing. It's very important for you to understand. Without this, you don't have an educational system. Without the student in the center, the parents involved in everything that you're doing, they have to be there. They're the primary guidance people, and they were ready to help, and they did. We had a staff that came in at master level teachers and didn't know how to teach the program. They didn't know how to teach it. They were not being taught that in their programs. So I had to have consultants come in and train my staff to be able to do the program that we were trying to offer. Community resource, I've just explained that to you, so important. Everybody in the community worked with my schools and with my children, and they benefited greatly from that. And then the school districts had to place the kids with us because we were school district placement. And so they were on the team, and they began to learn a lot about what needed to happen, too. So it was an educational team, and we all worked together. This is the program. 5 components: character development, basic and cultural literacy, study strategies, computer technology, social communication, and responsibility. 5 elements to this program. This is the character development. And the young man, he's now older, up in the corner, that's Jason Holder, the student that I worked with in the middle school years, working for me at this point. And what happened, I first went to see Jason to tutor him. They lived on a farm, and I said, "Where is he?" She says, "Oh, he's out in the barn. Let's go out and see him." I said, "Okay." So we go out in the barn, she opens the door, and out of the rafters on a rope comes this kid, and he dropped down at my feet, like Tarzan, and he dropped down at my feet, and I thought, oh my God. He said, "You're Mrs. Graves?" And I said, "Yes, I am." "You here to tutor me?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Well, let's get to it." And I thought, that child, he's going to be okay. Well, he went through high school, magna cum laude, and he went through college, the same situation, and he went for his doctorate. He has a doctorate in Outward Bound education, and he came to work for me. He was my Outward Bound instructor. You notice, how many of you have done a ropes course? Oh, never done a ropes course? I had to do a ropes course too. Jason wasn't going to let me not get away with it. He said, "You can't ask these kids to do this without you doing it." So I did. Oh, it was awful. But anyway, and then it was all outdoor activity. But every outdoor activity had a purpose, and it was to work on their character, to help them be better team members, to get over things that they didn't think and challenges they didn't think that they could do, and to really respect each other. All right, so this was the program that we used weekly. He would come in, and they would do something like this. All right? These literacy skills needed to be taught to my staff. These are the consultants that taught my staff how to teach in this school. You'll notice Ben-Hur. He was 5 feet tall, but he was a really excellent Feuerstein instructional enrichment instructor for my staff. You had to learn how to do the instruments, how to talk with the kids and so forth, to go through them. It's a long story, but anyway, you don't need to go through all of that. But we used it 15 minutes every day in the morning until we finished the program. And that woman in the center called me one day because she was doing all the post-testing on my children. We had an outside assessor. We didn't do the testing ourselves, and the schools didn't do the testing themselves. I wanted to know really where these kids were. Eloise was able to give me their IQ, their learning style, their learning difference, and then she was able to write a prescription. And I took that prescription and I put it in place for every child she tested. Well, at the end of the time, we only kept the kids for 3 years max. And then where did they go? back to their schools. This was a school whose intent it was to bring them back to public school education as learners, okay? So we had to be really good at what we were doing, and believe me, the state held us accountable. They really did, and that was all right, you know, so we could do that. But she called me one day, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm having lunch." She said, "Carol, for heaven's sakes, I'm calling you because I've tested 3 of your kids that are leaving this year. Their IQs are up 10 to 20 points, and I want to know what you're doing." And it was directly related to Feuerstein's work. I'm convinced of that. So we were able to change. We could teach their brain how to function and how to, you know, connect the right neurons with this little program that Feuerstein actually invented and prescribed by. The man on the right is Dr. Kemper. He was a psycholinguistic teacher. Guess what? He could teach anything having to do with reading and writing and language processing and visualization and all that stuff. He came in and he taught and worked with my staff and trained them all in that process. So they were able to work with the literacy skills that people hadn't yet found the answer to. If I'm on the right page, how about I do that? This is Mahesh Sharma. He is now still running the Center of Teaching and Developing Math Literacy. Now, I was math phobic, and I took his classes, and I learned that I could learn math. I have never seen a program like this one. It truly developed the literacy skills of math, not only the memorization of things, but the real understanding of how math works. And he trained my staff. And then Don Graves, we have Mr. Graves at the front desk. I don't know if he's related, but anyway, Don Graves was from the University of New Hampshire. He did the writing process. He taught us how to teach children to write. And he was there with us throughout. He was at UNH, so it was easy for him to come to us. The woman on the right, Dr. Bernice McCarthy, she believed that every lesson plan had to touch a learning style. Every single lesson plan. So you know those little boxes that we had in our planning books? That wasn't going to work for us. Because we had to have 4. We had to have 4 mats in every lesson so that we would touch every learning style in our classroom through our instruction. All right? So these people were instrumental in helping me to do it. Now, we had another problem. Cultural literacy. When you can't read, you cannot accumulate the skill to move into high school. You have to be able to have a base of understanding and information called prior knowledge before you can take that history class and before you can take that science class. Our kids were not reading. They were barely learning to read before they came to us. They needed to have a part of the program teach the cultural literacy. So what did we do? They weren't reading. They weren't going to read a textbook to learn it. So we did field studies. And what were field studies? We took them to 100 different sites we had that we went in field studies. Whatever we were teaching, whatever they were learning, we took them to a place where they could live it. For example, we went to the Patriots' Day, the Lexington Battle, the Battle of Concord in Lexington. You know, we were on the dirt road at 12 o'clock at night watching Paul Revere ride by and sounding the alarm. And then we went back to the hotel. We were up at 3:30, and we were walking down to the Commons. And there we watched everybody, the Minutemen, preparing for battle. Everyone was running around, and everyone was getting arms, and it was a reenactment, of course, but we were watching that. And then at dawn, we heard the drums of the British coming over the hill and marching into the community. Now that is a field study. That's what we did. That's how they learned. They ate, slept, drank it. They slept in the bottom. When we studied Mystic, they were in a tall ship sleeping in the bottom. They got up in the morning, they washed the decks, they climbed the ropes, they pulled up the masts. Then they went into the community and they were apprentices for the blacksmith, for all the different people that were represented there, okay? They lived through these field studies, the experience of what's in a book, okay? And we went to all of New England, a lot of museums, arts, places. Norman Rockwell was my favorite place to go. I loved that one, his studio. But we took them, Washington, D.C., every other year. We went to Washington, D.C., spent a week, okay? And then when we studied integration, we went to New York. We also went to the Grand Canyon. So they were able to learn that type of thing. That was one of the most important things that we were able to do, because people don't understand. You can teach them to read, but if it's so late that they haven't accumulated all this other stuff, you have to teach this too. We use the state standards for grades 1 through 8 as the basis for our instruction and for our field studies. They always went with a packet. You know how kids go on field studies? They run in here, they run in there. They're not doing a thing, but having fun. Our kids had a packet of work. And in that packet of work, they had to do math, reading, writing, science, and they had to bring it back to be graded. So it was indeed a study. All the data collection and stuff was another wing that they really learned from that. This is the lesson plan. It's too hard to see and too long to explain. This is the format lesson plan. You always assessed prior knowledge. You built the prior knowledge. You gave them practice with the vocabulary and context, and then you read. You did all of that before they actually read. And then after they did that, you had them apply it in some way. And then you had a project. So every single class had a project at the end of the lesson that tied into what was taught throughout the lesson itself. That was Bernice's, okay? This is the curriculum map. It was all interdisciplinary. Every subject connected to every other subject. So when we were reading books about water, because this was Wonders of Waterways. So we were reading books about water, that's what we were doing. And then we would go on the field study, and we, in this particular unit, learned to do poetry, because we were going to do a water journal book. So they would go out and gather the vocabulary, and then we put that into poetry. So they all, at the end of their experiences, were able to write their own poetry book. Cinquain, Diamantes, and haiku. And they wrote some really good stuff. They really did. And then in social studies, it was geography, the waterways of the world. And then in science, it was the rivers and their structure and the water table. How do you think, what is the natural boundary between Vermont and New Hampshire? It's right. It's the Connecticut River, all right? It's 401 miles from its source to the ocean, okay? Have you ever been to the source of a river? Have you been there? Okay. Our students went to the source of the river, 236-acre land with this little pond in the middle in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire. And then from that, we did the tributaries. We canoed them, not all of them, because there were 128. But we went and we canoed them all the way down to the estuary, where we then looked at that, studied that, and then into the ocean. So they knew the structure of a river. They not only knew it in words, they felt it and touched it and so forth. And then math, lots of math, data collection, temperature, they learned Celsius and whatever else. I guess we're not doing the old stuff that we used to do. But anyway, the math was all tied in as well. Okay. All right. We had an immersion room where literacy skills were done. And then, when they were ready, when they showed us they could read, write, and do all that other stuff, we put them in a room where the entire focus was how to study. They learned curriculum, and they learned it so well that they were able to take finals before they left us and ace them. But they learned all of that through the organization of study skills, through the computers that they used, and then how to learn. So they were ready to enter. We gave them everything they would experience in public schools in that classroom. The computer was an important part of our program. These are the things that we use them for. A lot of word processing. We did not use them for social action. It was all research, it was study, it was a tool of study, and it helped them to be able to project themselves in a really positive way. That's that. And when they left, what happened? They took the computer with them. It was there, with all their organizers on them and everything that they needed for that first year. You know, it was changing, technology was changing, but at least they had a year with a computer that was set up for them to learn with. So that was theirs, and they left with that. All right, social communication and responsibility. We had no discipline problems, none. We had no detention, none. We had a program called Take Charge. We had 4 non-negotiable rules, and there they are. Follow instructions, be respectful, do your work, let others do their work, okay? So what if they broke the rules? What happened? I had a behavior coach on board. He was in all of our classes. The minute that these kids went outside those non-negotiable words, it was dealt with. He would talk with them, he would process with them, he would help them to learn what they had done that they could not do in a non-negotiable world. So when I had Johnny talking to his friend across the thing when I'm trying to teach him, I'd say, take charge. The child would leave the room, he would go out, Mr. John would come in, process with him what happened, blah, blah, blah. What rule did you break? Made him identify it, and pretty soon to the door would come the child. And he'd say, Mrs. Cook, may I please speak with you? And I say, yes, you can. I am sorry that I didn't let you do your work when I was talking to so-and-so. May I try again? Yes, you can. That was our discipline. However, you had to do your homework or you couldn't leave. You had to stay until you completed your work. So that do your work was there. And we didn't tell them you had to stay in at recess. I simply said, look, you've got a choice. You can do your work during your recess time, if that's what you're choosing to do. We had a structured study every day, so you could do it in that period of time, you know. But if it's not finished then you're staying and your parents are going to come and pick you up. And that's why we had that enrollment agreement and that teaming. Those parents were right with us working every inch of the way. And the kids knew it. They knew it. And they responded. However, I have to tell you, one night I went home at 11:30 at night because a little guy tested me. He was in fetal position on the couch for I don't know how many hours. And I kept saying, are you going to do your work, Seth? No. Okay. I gave him his supper, back on the couch in fetal position with his back to me. So it got to be 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, quarter to 11. And he sat up on the couch and he looked at me and he said, you really mean it? I said, you think? So the mother came and got him, 11:30 at night. She came and got him and took him home. And he always was my biggest, do your work, because if she tells you, she means it. She's going to stay with you until you do, so you better think about that. Then we did a lot of activities and learning by doing. The children put on a dinner that the formal dining room would die for, with the flowers and the tablecloths. They did it. They did it all. They had to set up the whole thing, except they didn't do the entrees and they didn't do the accompaniments. They did all of they made all of the desserts, and breads and all of that. We had a big kitchen in the school, so we did a lot with culinary arts, but they put this on for 125 people, and they served it. This was their gift to their parents in gratitude for all that their parents did for them and helped them to be with a cool school. All right, that was one example. Career ed training, everybody would come from the community, do a presentation on their careers. At the end of the year, the kids were asked to write a resume choose one place they wanted to go to intern. They had to write a resume, they had to write a letter asking for an interview and submit it to the people who've been with us, and then go in for an interview. And if the interview went well, then they were accepted in for a day of internship. Okay, and this is what we did. And of course, we had it all fixed up ahead of time, but they didn't know that. And they really learned from doing these things. And my kids did everything in the community that they possibly could. They learned about community service. There wasn't a week that went by that they weren't reading to children in the elementary school or primary school, or we'd go and we'd act things out, you know, do our thing. And then I would take them to the nursing homes. Now this we will be very interested in. We went to the nursing home to sing for Christmas, and I had this tall, handsome young man, and there was this older woman in the wheelchair, all kind of not doing anything, and she put her hand out to him. And he went over, and he put his hand on top of hers, and she bit him. And so he said to me, she bit. He didn't say, but she bit. But those were, I mean, we just, the stuff I could tell, I could write the book on comedy. Let me tell you for the things they did. Okay, let me move us along. This is the results. Every student that attended both schools graduated high school. The ones on the left, the one on the left graduated, that's his graduation. The one on the right, she's up here, her name is Jennifer Pepperman. At this time, it was Swinney. That's her college graduation from Penn State. Her mother said, "What do you want for your graduation present?" She said, "I want Mrs. Cook to come to my graduation." So we went, Ira and I went. She had a straight 4.0 grade average. She got an award for her work. These are the kids that would have been thrown away. These are the children. They're here for you to look at and to see how they feel today about themselves and what they're doing. So many of them are doing the community stuff, the real things that make us who we are as a nation. And they're wonderful, wonderful kids. And here is an example of all of the different jobs that they're involved in. These are the things that, this is what they do now, okay? What are you, a bouncer? Oh, I was gonna put him in there. Listen, this little kid was skinny. Oh my God, he was afraid of his shadow. I found him on Facebook. Beefy, big muscles. I thought, what is he doing? A bouncer. Happily, I don't care, because you know what? I gave them a little thing that says success is finding the thing that you like to do best, and then become the best at doing it. It didn't matter what it was, whether it be a parent, whether anything. Just find what makes you happy in life, and then become the best at doing it. And so now I'm going to ask you, you can look at the pictures, you can, see what they are today and what they're doing. And I want to really thank you for coming and listening to me bloviate. But as you can see, I'm really passionate about this. All right. So just look at things and enjoy. If you have any questions, I'll be here to answer. Okay? Thank you all very much.
I wanted to go to your school.
We want to thank you, Carol. You're really cool.
Thank you.
It was terrific. You have any questions for Carol?
Now, do you have any? Sure.
Carol, how did you find the resource people to teach your teaching?
Actually, I researched them. I studied, I went out and I looked for people, I did a word of mouth. I happened to have one gentleman, a doctor, who was a pediatric physician, but he was at Children's Hospital and he had connection with a lot of these people. Chad Drake also had connection with a lot of these people. And I just lucked out with Feuerstein. I took a class from Ben-Hur. I think I was just impressed with him, I don't know. But anyway, I took a class from him. So I researched them. I found them, and I found those that had the best reputation and the most success with what they were doing. Thank you for the question. Anyone else have a question? Yes.
Hampshire's not known for being very generous with education and stuff. How did you get it this far?
No, they weren't very nice to me. No. And I really didn't want to go into what happened, but I had 6 years of hell, quite honestly. They did not want an alternative. They didn't want an alternative in New Hampshire because it was going to cost them. They had to pay the tuition of these students to these schools, and they didn't want to do that. So at one of the hearings, the attorney came to me and said, "I want you to see something." And I looked at it. It was a letter from the special education directors of the state, of whom I worked with. And it was a letter that said 15 ways to get rid of LSA. And they had done every single thing on that list. So he said, "What do you want to do about this?" I said, "I want you to let them know that I have this, and I want it to stop." And it did. But we had to be tenacious. We had to, because like you said, they weren't open to this. They weren't open to alternatives. Now, however, quite honestly, guess where my staff works? State Department of Education. They moved it. They couldn't wait to get them. They couldn't. And New Hampshire is number 3 in literacy in the United States today. So, you know, there are ways of getting around things, but it was tough. New Hampshire, you know, it was tough, you know. And I'm glad I'm still standing. I don't know why I am, honestly. Tenacious.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay? Yes.
School still going?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Doing very, very well.
I have a question. Mr. Foss,
Right.
you said he was dyslexic,
Very dyslexic.
and at the end of the process, does he know how to read
Yes. Yeah. He was on grade level, but that he came to us in the 7th grade on first grade reading level. And he stayed with us for 3 years. We expanded our program through high school because we were getting these through sophomore year, because we were getting these kids, you know, late. And so we needed at least 2 years of real intensiveness, and we ended in grade 8, you know, and they went back. So, and Denny told me in his testimony, I asked all of these kids if they would just write a little testimony, please. And they did. But they wrote me a book. Every one of them had, stuff that I didn't even know that they had noticed. One of the girls actually did my PowerPoint. I could have read what she, read, her letter, her testimony. But Denny said in his, "Carol, I was on the way to drop out. I did not want anything to do with school. I was giving my parents a fit and everything." But he came in and he did it. And he's the only student that wrote a business letter to the banker to come in for an interview and signed it, "Sensuously yours." He said, "But the computer showed it was okay." I said, "Not that word." Any other questions that you have? Yes, John.
Carol, to what extent has the program expanded?
It's,
With New Hampshire and then across the country?
you know what's well, it hasn't, and that's what my biggest disappointment is. I came down here to Jasper County and I tried to give them this program because then anybody needs it, it's there. They wouldn't take it. It looks like a lot of work, and it is initially, but once your teachers are trained, they train each other after that. You bring the consultants in and you really do a good job with a core group, and the rest of them get trained by them eventually. It always works that way. But people are so reticent. I don't know what it is about public school education that they're so resistant to finding things that really work for kids. I don't know. But I have the program. If you know anybody that needs it, it's free. Okay? I don't care.
One more question.
Okay. Yes.
Carol,
Rick.
what did you do about the individuals that had ADHD?
children that had ADHD, we did a lot of things for them in terms of how we structured the classroom. We took them off medication first and foremost. We took them off from medication, and we taught them how to be connected to who they were and what they could do, the strategies they could use that helped them to get through their day. And now I just have one more thing to say. Is it okay? Do we have time? I know you all want to go, but Evan Jones, and I'm not sure where he is, he's right here. This is Evan. Evan Jones has made a gift for all of you. Evan Jones has made a gift for all of you. Evan Jones came to my school, and he wouldn't talk, but he was doing origami. So I noticed this was his thing. So every morning I put the little origami paper on his desk, and he would make his, because he wouldn't talk to anybody, you know. And then I said, you know what, Evan, you do this so well, and we don't have an art teacher. Will you teach origami to the kids? And it was like, wow. His world opened, and he became really one of the kids that was the most outgoing and wonderful in the school. But he has made for all of you a gift. And the girls will have the baskets at the door. And I'm going to encourage that you take one of these peace cranes that he made. He did the same for me when I had stage 4 cancer and was in the infusion room. He sent me 100 peace cranes to give to the people in the infusion rooms. And that's what I did. And you know what? People would sit there and look at that. You know, this condition in there isn't very good. But pretty soon we were all talking. And there was this little, they never let that little peace crane leave their hand. He has the heart and the soul and the caring for the world. And that's what we need, okay? So please take one. They're in the baskets up there. Okay?
I know I speak for everyone in the room, we're so proud of you.
Oh, thank you, honey. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And please feel free to come up here and take a look at students that graduated